Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another fantastic episode of WebPageTest Live, where we are going to essentially have some guests and look at some sites, obviously auditing some sites, looking under the hood, using WebPageTest, of course. But we're glad to be back. I feel that 2 weeks is sometimes a long time, especially when you have like these ideas that you want to sort of talk about and whatnot. But I hope you enjoyed that last episode we did with Tim from Akamai. We had a lot of fun looking at some of his favorite sites. But today we have a very, very special guest, all the way from UK Leeds, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah, Harry, man. Once again, I'm welcoming you to the stage.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. It's looking forward to doing this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for those who are not familiar with Mr. Roberts, which I would find surprising, but award-winning developer and who has an extremely long list of clients. In fact, I was actually going to talk about that.
All right.
You've had like a multitude of clients. Actually, I was looking at this a couple of days ago, just to remind myself. It's like, oh my God, the BBC, Kickstarter, Akamai has been a client of yours, Financial Times, Adobe. It's been kind of a great ride for you. Speaking of rides, here's a quick question. Have you had a particular project or a client that you had like a ball with working?
I always wish I had a better answer to this. All my clients are great, and we always develop really good relationships, often friendships. Like I'm making friends with a lot of my clients because they're all such nice people. But I hope they won't mind me saying, but I'm working with REI at the moment, the sort of outdoor sort of like retailer. And they're great because they've already built a really fast website and they've hired me to make it faster. And it's like, wow, that's a fascinating challenge. Normally there's so much low-hanging fruit, but they've been very diligent. They've built a very good website already. So we're working together to try and like take that up to the next level. So that's a current project that I'm really, really enjoying. I always talk, I can see it right here. Like my kitchen's just there. And I've got a big Vitamix blender from when I worked with Vitamix a few years ago. That was a really nice project. They're one of the nicest teams I've worked with. We did some really good quality work. Went out to Cleveland, Ohio, which was a great little city.
Nice.
Did some really good work with Vitamix. They were a wonderful client. But everyone I've worked with has been a gem.
Awesome.
A really interesting one last year. Saks Fifth Avenue, like the sort of fashion brand or fashion retailer.
Yes.
They specifically wanted help. So last year in January, everyone was panicking about web vitals. So it's like Google this, Chrome that. Whereas Saks was specifically interested in iOS performance, which is a completely different kettle of fish. Auditing sites on actual iOS devices, having to use Safari's DevTools was
Web Inspector, as they call it.
Web Inspector. But yeah, the interesting thing though, right, is because all DevTools is just like JSON and HAR files. I just found myself exporting whatever Safari told me, just export that and import it into Chrome's DevTools. Way nicer. It's very transportable. That was a really interesting project just for the novelty. What I find is that a lot of my work is, I struggle to say this without sounding like a bit of a dick. It's like sort of same stuff, different project, right? It's like same old. So okay, I saw this problem on a site last week and I'll see it again next week. But the Saks Fifth Avenue one was really nice because, like I say, everyone was panicking about web vitals. And Saks was like, no, we just want to focus on iOS performance. So that was a really personally very, very enjoyable project.
That's really interesting. And I mean, things were, I guess, settling with ecom because everyone at one point was scrambling to make sure that their ecom was tuned right because of the pandemic. And they had to make sure that they could still operate and sell and make some money or at least have some revenue and whatnot. So when you mentioned that, I was like, oh man, are they late to the game trying to to retool their site. But if they were looking at iOS specifically, that's pretty interesting. You'd mentioned Core Web Vitals. I think I tweeted this yesterday. It's sort of like a non-event, but yesterday was the anniversary of the absolutely first commit that was done. And I remember digging around one day. I was like, "Oh no way! The very first commit was done March 23rd, which was yesterday in 2020."
Oh wow.
And I shot them an email about that. They're like, "Yeah, it's kind of random, but they don't consider it an anniversary." But I thought it was
Yeah.
kind of interesting.
Very
Um,
timely.
was that?
Very timely.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we might as well get into it. We talked about the vitals and helping SACs and whatnot. How about we? I know you have a couple sites in particular that you wanted to look at that were, I'd say, apropos in your case. What did you have in mind?
So, I mean, fair warning, I haven't done any prep insofar as we're all going to do, well, I mean, it's WPT live, right? We're going to do this live together. So we're going to look at the specialized website. And there's every chance we'll take a look at it and find nothing at all. And I'll sort of embarrass myself. But we're all going to dive in from the exact same starting point to take a look and see what's going on.
Awesome.
So I've got no, I haven't really pre-prepared anything like, oh yeah, we're going to look at this really interesting case study. We don't know what we're going to find. So we're all going to dive in and take a look at that, I guess.
Awesome.
Oh, go on.
No, go ahead, please.
The reason I chose the specialized website is because my bike that's in the shop, my pride and joy, is a specialized bike. So we're going to audit that site, that particular page, just to give me some kind of connection.
Awesome. Hey, I love that. And I'd mentioned this. I think when I did the Paul Calvano, who's in the chat, by the way. What's up, Paul? I was just looking at EVs, like electric vehicles, and then I went into this sort of like rabbit hole, and I was like, dude, let's look at these three cars, because Sony had announced one, then Tesla 3. I didn't realize was like the best-selling car, let alone EV. And then I think I was looking at BMW at one point. Not that I'm gonna get one, but I know someone who is.
Yeah.
But how about I do this? I'm gonna see if I can just set you up so you can share your slides. There we go.
So anyway, the thing is, all I was going to say is because you and I are presenting through this, I can't remember what it's called, but we're not using the Twitch link. So that means I can't see if anyone's like in the stream, like asking questions or anything.
Oh, I'll see it.
Cool. Yeah, you can feel that.
For sure. And I was actually going to ask you, did you want to maybe share the URL with the community so they could sort of follow along? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, I don't know where I'm sharing that, so I'll have to send it to you for you to share.
Put that in the private chat, and I'll share it with the audience.
Cool. Right. So let me get you back then.
And we should be rocking.
Cool. I'm just gonna freestyle this and just talk out loud. It's meant to be really boring. This is basically exactly what I would be doing. My first day on a client project, this is exactly what I would normally do. So it should be an insight into that.
Perfect.
If you've asked questions and you can field them and relay them to me, I'll happily just try and make it a bit more of dialogue.
Absolutely. So what I was going to say is, or ask essentially, is as you start a site audit and whatnot, what's the first thing you take a look at?
Very, 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 very first thing is, even if a client emails me saying, hey, we might want to hire you, can you jump on a call next week? I will just grab the domain from their email address and I'll straight away run it through WebPageTest, just so I know what I'm dealing with. If it's a complete dumpster fire, then it's like, cool, yeah, this client might need a lot of input, or just to familiarize myself with what they're working on. The very, very first thing I do is run a web page test, much like we're seeing here. The other thing I do is Treo, and big ups to Treo. It's such a great tool. Let me just grab that. So Treo. Oh, come on. I should have done so. Specialized. Did I spell that right? Yeah, I did. So specialized. So Treo, I use this all the time. This is Crux data, so it's completely Chrome specific. This just tells me how the site's been behaving over the last year, and you can see stuff ain't great. So I know this is like this isn't like an ad for WebPageTest. Obviously, we're going to talk about WebPageTest a lot, and it is the tool I use the most. But my very first jump-off point on any project is, while these tests are running, I nip over to Trello. And these numbers we see here, we can gather some really good information. So their first byte time's pretty bad. 900 millisecond first byte. It's been fairly consistent for the last 12 months. What I'm more interested in is deltas. So 900 millisecond first byte, 1.1 second first contentful. The difference between these two numbers here, 200 milliseconds, that tells me they've only got about 200 milliseconds of render blocking content, very, very crudely. That's great. Like it might take a while to get that first byte, but they're painting it almost immediately. So the delta between those two numbers, the difference between those two numbers is quite telling. The fact that's such a small number means that their render blocking content is minimal, right? So they've either got lots of inline stuff or very little external render blocking stuff in the head. That's something I can glean from that. However, the delta between these two is enormous. So we've got over 2.5 seconds between the first contentful and the largest contentful paint. And that's at origin level. So this is across the entire site. What this tells me is, there's certain stuff you can just work out just intuitively. It's a bike site. It sells bikes. It's e-commerce. There's going to be images involved. So maybe that delta is poorly optimized images. Maybe making the images smaller or optimizing them better could bring that delta down. But usually, a difference this big, it's going to be like client rendered JavaScript. So that you get a first contentful paint there, then you download a load of JS, run that, and actually build the website on the person's device. Very disrespectful. And that's why you've got a slow LTP, or it could be they are building like their product carousel in JavaScript. So it might not be a fully client rendered site, but it could be the hero is dependent on JavaScript. Or it could be something like the sort of most upsetting foot gun I ever see is when people lazy load their LTP.
Right.
So
driving with the handbrake.
Exactly. So that is of interest to me, the difference between those two numbers. First input delay is a bit of a mess because this always comes back so favorable, and I just don't believe that for a second. And CLS is dreadful. CLS is really bad.
It's a bad one.
Now, I've spent a lot of time on the specialized website, and I happen to know that this is really bad because, well, the reason that's bad, the reason this is bad is because they do a lot of stuff on the client. They build this site predominantly in JavaScript, which means that you basically see the page getting built, which is why stuff moves around so much. I might as well say the most controversial thing nice and early. JavaScript is the fastest way to build yourself a slow website. And specialized use a lot of JavaScript. And we're about to see that probably in these web page tests.
What an amazing quote. I think you and Alex Russell would just have a good time together.
Alex Russell's great. Another thing I'll do is, I don't know what the specialized site's actually built with. So I'm going to go to built with and find out. So this is for the actual PDP, product details page. Am I?
Surprised you're not using Wapalizer.
Me too. Yeah, I don't know. I just use built with because it's just
for sure.
Habitual. But so we can see using a bunch of stuff here. That's not of that much interest to me. Google Tag Manager, that might be of interest, right? They're using SAP Commerce Cloud. That's what it's built on. Okay, they're using CDN.js. Terrible idea. Don't host your static assets offsite. Bring all your static assets onto your own origin. So CDN.js, Cloudflare.js, not a good idea. Don't use these. We'll discuss that shortly. Right, handlebars, Polyfill.io, Knockout.js, Loader, Vue.js. So they're using a few different sort of templating languages and client-side frameworks there. And to be honest, that's all of real interest. That's all that's really of interest to me at the moment. They're using Vue. SAP Commerce Cloud is, for a front-end developer, that's largely irrelevant. But this might influence things like big sort of closed source e-commerce solutions. I've had it in the past. I'm not going to name any names, but I've had big sort of e-commerce solutions where clients aren't allowed to put any of their own telemetry in there. No APM, no application performance monitoring. So it'd be like, if I see this and it's Magento, I'm like, well, that's not great, but at least it's a little more accessible than perhaps Salesforce Commerce Cloud.
Yeah.
So these are my jump off points. So I think first thing I'm interested in is why is this gap between LCP and FCP so large?
That's it's interesting that you take a look at built with right away, because I actually do the same as well. I mean, like I'll do a quick profile, and then I'll be like, boom, what are they using here? You know, what should I expect? You know, who says they're magicians, but they're really not.
Right.
You know, and but yeah, like I said, I was in a different client for that. But yeah, I think it's very important to see what is actually under the hood, not actually running, but you know what parts that they have going on.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very crude proxy. Well, it's not crude. I guess this is a very low fidelity. If I was actually working with Specialized, and if you're watching Specialized, you can hire me.
Hey,
I'll swap you some web perf for a new bike. I would typically not actually use this tool at all if I'm working with a client, because I'll just ask them, what's it built with?
Yeah.
What is your stack? What's your path to production, et cetera, et cetera. So it's I only use this in situations like right now where I don't have anyone specialized to answer these questions for me. So yeah. So I'll usually look at these while WebPageTest is running. And here is a series of tests that I ran earlier today, actually. Had to use an emulated Moto G4 rather than a real device because it was just too big a queue. 3G fast out of the US, and I tested the US locale. So yeah, just a quick look at this. I mean, we don't care about load times anymore, but we can see that load times are all pretty high, but all pretty consistent. We can see that the PDP, the product details page, is the outlier in terms of load time. But again, we don't care about load. Generally on an e-commerce site, I'll do homepage, like a category page, a product listing page, product details page, and a search page. Then what I'll do is I will check all those boxes, blah, 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 and we'll do a comparison. So first thing I'm finding interesting here is every single site, every single page has got roughly the same start render. 2.5 seconds. If we adjust this to a little more, like 0.1 second fidelity. Okay, we're still real close, right? 300 milliseconds is the biggest gap between. What this tells me straight away is I think every page has got the same head tags. Start render is generally governed by your head. The head is the biggest render blocking part of a page. If every page has got a roughly similar start render, well, it generally tells me if I optimize the head tags on the home page, every other page is going to get the knock-on effect of that. We can confirm that or verify that, I suppose, by just cranking up all of these. And so some pro tips for people. It's really easy to see where your head tags are. Chrome has got a two-phase. This is all tested in Chrome, by the way. Other browsers are available. Chrome's got a two-phase loading strategy. It'll swarm your head tags because your head tag they're vital. The head tag, I know I said this like 30 seconds ago, it's the single biggest render blocking part of a page. So Chrome's going to swarm that. It's going to really, really just work hard to get your head tags solved. So what you'll see here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, head tags here are only 5 files long. Well, 4. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how I know the head tags are that big, because you can see we've got this kind of area here is like one phase. Then everything else here is like a second phase. So you can see the head tags on the Specialized site are tiny. And we move into the body very quickly with these files here. This is an uninteractive waterfall at the moment. But what I can see here is we've got a few liabilities. This is render blocking. This file is also render blocking, but on a different origin, which is annoying. I would like to bring that from media dot onto www dot. That should trim that down. These files are in the head, but they are asynchronous. They're not flagged as render blocking. What is interesting, this file here is render blocking, but it's defined much later on. So that file 21, or this search, well, Angular basically, I'm going to be keen to find out how that is render blocking so late in the page.
Yes.
I've already got a theory. That's not in the head tags. We know it's not in the head tags, so it's not render blocking. It could be parser blocking later in the body, but it wouldn't get flagged as this. So this is either a web page test bug, like they exist, or this is going to be injected pretty naively with document.write.
Ooh, okay.
Well, basically, the spec says any like create element script.source equals whatever. Any async snippet, any injected JavaScript is asynchronous by default. That's what the spec says. That's why we have those asynchronous injection snippets in the first place. Any injected JavaScript is asynchronous. So if this file isn't called from the HTML and it's injected somehow, that should be async and it shouldn't get flagged as render blocking. If this has been injected with JavaScript and is render blocking, it's document.write. We'll see if that's the case. Right, anyway, so head tags. Let's have a look. That's the search page. That's the product details page, products listing page, category page. You see those head tags? They're all identical. Look at those. So basically, it means that any optimizations to the head tags made in one place will be felt across the entire site, which is nice. Makes my job a lot easier.
Awesome. And I want to take a moment to explain something very quickly for those watching. What happened right here is Harry wanted to compare 3 links. Oh no, 5 links. I'm sorry. Category page X, Y, and Z. And what happened was he was able to do that. And first, we were able to compare the 5 film strips and even bring it down to a more granular. I think it was like 0.1 denomination, something of the sort, to see exactly where things were starting to render, where the page was starting to render. And below that, one of the features that we have at WebPageTest is that we can actually superimpose the waterfalls on top of each other and look at them separately through some opacity. That's what the sliders are there for. So you could look at, page 1 and 5 together, 2 and 4, all 5 on top of each other, whatever it is. So you can start to make these comparisons and see what exactly is going on. And again, I get back to the idea that this is investigative work. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so if people look at the address bar right now, that URL pattern, you can just compare any number of web page tests. So you could compare a first view and a repeat view. You could compare Firefox to Safari. You could compare, like we are, separate pages to one another. This is a really great view, actually, for the thing I'm going to discuss next is just building up an idea of the topology of the site, how the site looks sort of fairly holistically. Other good things about this view is, like, we can see visual progress plotted. So, for example, if we look at the search page, goes from 48% visually complete, drops off a cliff to 5%. So something moves off page, perhaps. It goes from, we can see that the home page is visually complete. It lags for ages, like 10%, 10%, then boom, 99%. What that tells me is that something's missing. Boom, we solve a problem. We just need to work out what's stalled on this flat bit around here. This is really great data. One thing that's interesting to notice or note is that some of these graphs are 0 indexed and some aren't. So what you'll find is if we look at this visually complete here, we can see there's actually quite a large variation between 20 seconds there and 45 seconds visually complete there. However, if we look at this, it's like, holy shit, look at load time here is like way worse than the others.
But
this isn't 0 indexed, it starts at 30. So just be mindful of that. And see here, 40,000, 55,000. That it's just a bit not misleading, but you just need to be aware. So yeah, this is a pretty useful graph or visualization for just comparing how pages respond. Like CLS is 0 indexed here. We see the product listings page has much worse CLS than the others. But yeah, let's go and dive in. So what I will do here, go on, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say if that CLS was in 0 index, that'd be real problems.
Yeah. So what I then do is just command click test run details of all of these. I'm not going to do it now because I've already done this. This is the one bit of prep I did do.
Mm-hmm.
These numbers here are really, really useful to us. Those ones that I've highlighted there. For each page type, I copy and paste those into a spreadsheet, and I'll make sure everyone gets a link to this spreadsheet. So homepage, we've got time to first byte, first paint, first contentful, speed index, largest contentful, CLS, total blocking time, and then for good measure, lighthouse score.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's for each page type. What I do is I just calculate the variance, and I've got a conditional formatting just to sort of show severity. So our most consistent timing is time to first byte. It's the most green with 0.04 variance. The most erratic timing is LCP.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most problematic, I guess, or the least consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Followed by speed index. Speed index is visual completeness over time.
Mm-hmm.
Usually speed index, a late speed index or a large speed index means that the page took a long time to be visually complete. So speed index is very, very basically speaking, visual completeness over time. If you've got a really bad speed index, that's often could be caused by a few things. It could be just that, you're taking forever to get content on screen. Instead of going like, boom, the site is finished, you're like really slowly, like an image here, then an image there, then a cookie banner pops up 20 seconds in. That's what's normally going to exaggerate speed index, is like late loaded content above the fold. So we can see here that the product listing and product details page have got like 25, 30 second speed indexes.
Yep.
It's large contentful paint, 25 and 38 second LCP. The fastest LCP here is 18 seconds, right? And we're gunning for 2.5 to be good. And the fastest here is 18. This site has got...
And you mentioned the 18 seconds, and that's the one with the they all actually fairly had a fairly decent timed first byte. So you're looking at a lot of just, you know what I mean? Like someone's wearing cinder blocks.
Yeah, well, basically what I'm getting from here is time first byte is the most consistent, still a little higher than I'd want, but over a faster EG connection, that is not terrible.
Mm-hmm.
First paint and first contentful are really good. That tells me that, like, it's kind of verified by what we saw here. First contentful suggests that we don't have much render blocking stuff. We know we don't. We looked at that waterfall and I was like, oh god, these head tags are tiny. Speed index and LCP being so bad, that's a hallmark of three potential things. I've spent so long doing this and looking at this stuff. I see numbers like this, and there's three things I'm going to investigate, or three potential things going on here. First one is this site built using JavaScript?
Mm-hmm.
Do we load like an app shell really quick, and then we spend forever downloading and booting a client-side app, which then hydrates the virtual DOM, which then requests an image, which then gets displayed? That's one option. Second option is, have we ended up lazy loading our LCP? The amount of times I see like an LCP with loading equals lazy, and I'm like,
you've seen that a lot, huh?
Oh god, yeah. I mean, I mentioned it so much that I think Andy Davis ended up getting it put into Lighthouse as a thing, like don't lazy load your LCP.
Mm-hmm.
Third thing, with numbers this extreme, and I saw this on a client just this week, it's really heartbreaking. Their cookie banner pops in 25 seconds in, or like a sign up to newsletter modal. So the LCP may have been like an image this big. I don't know if people can see me anymore. It's just my screen. But you may have an LCP image which is like fairly standard size. Mm-hmm. Then about 25 seconds in, you cover that with a modal that says, hey, sign up to our newsletter. And that modal ends up larger than the actual content. And you basically stolen your own LCP. So I see numbers like this and I start thinking, right, this is either built on the client, it's either lazy loaded, or like they've built like their image gallery in JavaScript. I saw this with a client recently, and I can't show you it because that would be rude. But the client recently, they're using Magento, and Magento says, we use require.js to load all JavaScript asynchronously because it makes page loads faster. And it's like, well, that's someone with good intentions who's missed the point. If you lazy load everything, then nothing's going to be fast, right? So I've got a client who they built like an image gallery slider in JavaScript. It exists as HTML, but then JavaScript runs, makes it interactive, makes it into an image carousel, But then that JavaScript is loaded via require.js. Require.js is got an async attribute at the bottom of the body tag. So basically, the browser doesn't prioritize require.js. It leaves it quite, oh, well, we'll get that when I need it.
Yep.
So require.js is queued behind everything else. Then require.js runs, and it's like, oh, cool, we need this and this and this, and we need jQuery and this image gallery thing. I'll request that now, idly. Then that finally arrives and boots and runs. Then this client's LCP is at like 30 odd seconds because like someone decided that, oh yeah, all JavaScript must be lazy loaded, loaded asynchronously, blah, blah, blah. And it just pushes everything down the stack. So I've got a client currently who basically it's this JavaScript thing. Get rid of it. So anyway, that's what I'm interested in here. CLS is medium stability, but still we've got in budget, way over budget. Yeah. So home and category pages, how are these built that is keeping us well in budget? And how are these built that is getting us drastically over budget? Last thing I'll mention, just because it's confusing, and a lot of people ask me about this. Oh yeah, also Lighthouse scores. Jesus.
Yeah, I know. Like the last three.
So a lot of people ask me about this. How come first paint is later than first contentful paint? How is that even possible? Like, how has we got 2.5 here and 2.32 there? How's that even possible? WebPageTest for your first paint timings. So actual FP, first paint or start render, is actually grabbed from a frame of a video, which only goes down to 100 millisecond resolution. That's why these are all one decimal place, 2.4, 2.5 seconds, etc. So first paint is actually proxied from here, from a video still, like a frame from a video. And that's why these numbers are higher resolution, 2.103, and different. So that is actually an event that's emitted by Chrome. That is very high resolution. That is very accurate. Yep. So generally speaking, these numbers are basically, these are close enough to identical that you know that your first paint was a contentful paint. But just so people looking at this don't end up thinking, well, how can first paint be after first contentful?
Yeah,
because that is proxied from a still frame from a video.
Yeah, that actually came up recently online. And I mean, I was talking to Mr. Meenan, if he's in here. I'm not sure if he is, but I was talking to him about it, and he kind of broke that down as well. So, yeah. But it is an interesting moment.
Cool. So let's go and have a look at, I mean, let's just go right in for this one. The PDP, product details page, and it's 38-second LCP. So, okay, so here we've got this modal overlay covering the content. Is that our LCP? Is that why it's so late?
We could find out.
We can find out because we can click LCP right here. So if anyone's following along, sorry, just to make sure people following along can follow along, this original URL we sent out, we're clicking on this penultimate link, this one that ends in 199464.
Got a little comment here from Mr. Meenan. It's probably not in the main data table, but WebPageTest also records a browser's reported first paint.
Okay, cool. Hey, Pat. So anyway, yeah, this LCP, this is a really smart little feature. Basically, we can just click the word LCP, and it'll take us to it. And okay, the LCP actually is this image, so it's not the overlay. This is the bike that I would normally have hanging on the wall behind me. Apart from mine's a much nicer color than this one. Mine's green.
And let's not click on the price, please.
Yeah, let's not do that. The interesting thing is noticing here, this is this LCP happened at 38 seconds. We've still got Times New Roman here, so like definitely font problems. Like
nice call.
We've got a big we've got a big layout shift. Have you noticed this gray background? So we've got a layout shift there. So why is this largest paint so late? Well, I could probably guess now. This is definitely. Well, it's almost definitely built in JavaScript. Requested very late for some reason, and look, lazy loaded.
Bingo. So there you go.
Here's a little thing that I tend to add to like I add this to like a dev style sheet, and then outline 10 pixel solid red, and then I just add this to like a local override, or if I've got the dev site checked out, I'll add this to a style sheet. I'll just bum around the site, And if I see any red borders above the fold, that's how I quickly tell that, okay, we're lazy loading above the fold imagery, and that's not a good idea. So that's a bit of debugging style sheet that I often employ.
Nice, nice. I'm going to answer this quick question. I know you mentioned that you're going to share the Google Sheets.
Yep.
Someone had just asked if this Excel running a script to get the data, is it openly available? We'll be sharing that link later on.
Yeah, it's not doing anything clever. It's not scripted. Yeah. It's a copy and paste jobby. It's just a template that I just spin up a new one every time I start with a new client. It's a bit of a mess at the moment.
Yeah. I remember you shared it in the past.
Yeah. So we can visualize stuff much nicer here. So LCP is problematic there. That's CLS 0.8 on this page. So we can see the PLP, CLS we need to investigate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll share a link to this. So what's really nice is what we can see here is if we scroll down, that LCP element, this image, which is hosted on a different origin, so that's already slightly problematic. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that's going to be a couple 100 milliseconds worth. I think that's a very small fix compared to whatever the hell ended up as getting a 40-second LCP. This is really nice. Well, actually, no, this is bad news, but it's a really nice feature of WebPageTest. The LCP candidate was the 145th thing to be requested.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's terrifying, that, isn't it? And then here's another really neat feature. You see these little like bone-colored white bits?
Yes.
Like this here, or this white bit here. Mm-hmm. These have only been on WebPageTest the last couple of years. These never used to be there, but these are such a great clue. That white is basically the file was discovered, or the resource was discovered here, and the browser just held off requesting it until this gray starts. In this case, it's gray. That white just tells me the browser knew this file existed for this long, but didn't dispatch a request yet. What's terrifying is, look at the white bit for this image.
Yep.
The LCP image wasn't even put in front of the browser until, like, what, 34 seconds? So the browser didn't even know this image existed until 34 seconds. There's only really one way you can do this. There's only one way you can manage that, and that's by injecting this with JavaScript way too late. So basically, the problem here is clearly going to be JavaScript. We click on this. It says it was loaded by the HTML, but that's probably just virtual DOM. That's probably not actually a piece of HTML, because there's no way the HTML will be hidden from the parser for 34 seconds. That's requested by the HTML, but it's almost guaranteed that'll be virtual DOM. So yeah, there's a problem. We don't want to be requesting our largest contentful paint as the 145th asset.
Yeah.
If we go up, we can see like mainly first-party stuff. I mean, this is third-party, first-party. I can share a link to this, but I'm not going to go into any detail. Just don't do this. Don't host your static assets on someone else's origin. Bring that onto www.specialized.com. There's no need to host this anywhere else. So we got basically a lot of first-party, third-party stuff. We got first party. So we can see this JavaScript file, 3 meg of JavaScript.
Incredible.
850 over the wire. That's why it takes best part of 9 seconds to download.
Yep.
What's annoying is vendor runs before build, but arrives later. And there's not much we can do about this. These are synchronous files. We can see that build.js is way heavier. So it's 850 kilobytes over the wire. This is 130 over the wire. What you ideally want, and I remember Pat, I need to dig out the video because Pat put this really succinctly at Perf Now a couple of years ago. What you want is files to arrive, be useful, arrive, be useful, arrive, be useful. Basically, what you want to do is minimize the gap between the file arriving and its execution. So what we can see is this file is needed second, but arrives first and just idles on the device until this file arrives second, runs first. Ideally, we want those in the other way around, but I don't think there's much we can do about that. I think it's just network sort of contention. I think the server's trying to send all this data and just putting way more emphasis on sending that file back.
So I'm going to take a minute to explain a couple things. Anyways, for people who are, again, watching this and trying to follow along what's going on. Oh, my God. My screen just flickered. So if we go back to the waterfall, we were able to sort of determine, first of all, that that one JavaScript request that was, 3 megs was a heavy one simply because the request was mostly dark amber. because that indicates a lot of data is being downloaded at that time. Now, he also mentioned, it coming in second because they had to wait for the first request that should have been second to execute, and we knew it was executing, waiting for that because of that pink little bar, which indicates the JavaScript is executing at that moment. And the other thing that I think I wanted to mention, what was it? Oh yeah, and he was able to determine when we were looking at the LCP image, and sort of like getting the details, but we were able to find out where in the request chain that LCP image was coming up, because WebPageTest will help you by highlighting the request in the waterfall of that actual LCP image, and that's how we were able to determine that it was request number, I think, like 145, which is obviously for an LCP image much too late.
What's also quite interesting is 200 kilobyte image, and it's just grossly oversized for a mobile device.
Mm-hmm.
God, how nice is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's grossly oversized for a mobile device, but the problem here, basically, if we optimize this image, make it half the weight, at half the kilobytes, it's still a drop in the ocean. The problem isn't the size of the image; it is the fact that it's not discovered until 145. So it'd be interesting to work out what the request initiator chain was for this. But 99% certain it's happening in JavaScript.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is we've got jQuery UI. We saw Vue.js earlier. Yeah, Vue is here. We've also got Vendor. So you'd expect Vue to be in Vendor. It looks like we're using React as well. Brilliant. Yep. If in doubt, throw a couple of frameworks at it. Usually solves the problem. It's a joke. Don't do that. We can click on this now, and we can see. Well, it's classed as blocking. It doesn't have an initiator here, so we'll have to look at that in DevTools. Oh no, it does have an initiator. Sorry. So okay, this is loaded by. I just didn't scroll up. This is loaded. I remember I said this. This seems a bit suspicious. Like, why would it be a blocking thing if it's in the body? We can see it wasn't discovered until just in time. So you see how these have got these white bars. So these files were all discovered around our first contentful paint, sort of when the head was finished parsing. And these were just waiting in a request queue. This one was discovered basically and requested just in time. That's a surefire hallmark of this being injected with JavaScript. We can see here it was loaded by a JavaScript file. So let's go and take a look at this. Loaded by line 0 of that file, I reckon.
Line 0. Okay.
Well, that's because. Oh no, what I'm looking for? Document. Right. The source is. Well, we've got a document.write in there. Yeah, so we are loading a script with document.write, and the source is whatever that E is. Yeah, we can see that we are using document.write. That is possibly what is causing that to be flagged as render blocking. Document.write is a terrible idea for performance because basically what happens in the middle of that JavaScript file we were just looking at, we say, whoa, hold up, inject something into the DOM at this point, which is another synchronous script, which then has to run, and it blocks the parser for a long time. On slow enough connections, Chrome will intervene, and it will actually not allow that to happen. So there's a risk that there will be an intervention where on a slow enough connection, or if someone's got like whatever the data saver mode is currently called in Chrome, there is a risk that AngularJS just won't even arrive. Geez, we've got React and Angular and Vue.
Amazing.
This web page probably weighs more than the bike.
That's a good one.
Okay, so yeah, just fascinating stuff here.
A couple questions here that came in the chat, and I know you'd mentioned for me to ask you. I don't know if you can see that, by the way, when I bring him to the screen. This one says, why are all the files so long in the request queues?
So stuff like this. It's basically the browser's scheduling. So the reason why is basically Chrome's own heuristics. You'll see that files that are needed very early don't get queued at all. They just straight away hit the network. These files here hit the network very, very early. These are requested from a fair amount later in the HTML, so 440. So they're going to be maybe closing body tag kind of scripts. These are, oddly enough, That's actually later in the HTML, but queued even less. Maybe these are parser blocking. No, they're non-blocking. But basically, it's mainly the browser's heuristics. And as you get later in the like stuff like this, low priority requests will normally just idle until there's a chance for them to be requested. You can fairly quickly spot third-party land because you just get way more DNS, TLS, TCP, and your waterfall gets way more exaggerated.
I had another question here from Andy. 1984. Let's go. On screen, what can I do if if actually a cookie banner is identified as LCP on mobile? Question mark.
Redesign it so it's smaller than your actual contentful paint. So if you need a cookie banner, load it as fast as possible, and just redesign it so that, like, I don't know, just make sure it's smaller than your actual content. That's the only advice there. Is if you have to load a cookie banner, make sure it's smaller than your actual content. It's the only way to solve that. There's numerous ways around that. You could have like a tiny cookie banner that is like, in order to use this website, please enable cookies ... and truncate it and make sure it's one sentence with an accept or deny, and then they could like expand an accordion to read all of the content. But the only way around it is make sure it isn't your largest contentful paint.
Nice. We have a bit of an active chat here. Pat Meenan said low priority requests are limited to 10 at a time. And shout out to Paul Calvano. Like I said, he's in the chat. Looks like they are using DNS prefetch for a few third parties and could benefit from pre-connect instead. Yes, the resource hints. What is Alistair saying here? GDPR's other user protection features, cookie, Any questions? Also third party. Cool. Let me not keep you. I'll just wrap some of these up.
Yeah.
Keep going.
All right, let's move on. So basically, I'm just wondering how on earth that was the 145th request. That is just... Unfortunately, this is not going to be a very interesting audit now, because my only advice is don't build web pages on the client. Client-side rendering is just, it's a fool's gold. It's never worked for anything. It's never faster. I've never, ever advised a client to switch to client-side rendering. At this point, we've delivered an HTML page. At this point, we've delivered all the styles it needs. That should be the end of the story. That should be boom. There's your web page. Go and buy the bike. Instead, we've put 3 frameworks in there. We've put all these sort of first third parties. Got all this stuff, these third party stuff. Excuse me. And then whatever, we've just caused ourselves so much work to get to this point here, where we're not even discovering the reference to the LTP until 34 seconds in. This will be a very short audit. It basically just don't do this. Obviously, we need to chip away at this and like have a bit more, slightly more practical help for this client. So it'd be like the case of, okay, well, make sure that these files aren't being really lazily loaded, right? Make sure that if it is content that's building the page, that you do prioritize it and you don't stick it at the closing body with a defer on there. Make sure it arrives. Because this thing like, or you should defer all your JavaScript. Well, if your JavaScript is required to build the UI, don't defer it, just get it down the pipe as fast as you can. So if we go and look at, if we view source, so here's a pro tip. Elements panel is your DOM. So it's not your HTML, it's your DOM. And from my point of view, I don't really want to see the DOM. I want to see the HTML. So open in sources panel. What we'll see, we go right down to the bottom. I've got really dry throat. I'm going to have to get some water in a second. But all right, we'll see here. Loads of stuff. Right towards the closing body tag. This is all deferred. So we're telling the browser, hey, take your time with this stuff. We're in no rush. Vendor.min and build.min. Yeah, which run in that order. So defer is all these files are going to run in order. They're going to run in this exact order. And they're all going to run just before the DOM content load event fires. Well, now, all these files, I would presume, could be fairly like not that dependent on one another. So what you might be able to do is actually async a few of these. So we don't have to run these in order. We could run them whenever they're ready, maybe. So this one we can async. So that's going to run anytime from line 465 onwards. These are all the other ones that are deferred are guaranteed to run just before your DOM content load in that order. Maybe a little faster to make these async. But even then, putting async near a closing body tag is pointless. Async doesn't mean run whenever the file's available. It means run whenever the file's available on or after it was defined. So if that file there, async, if that was returned in like 30 milliseconds from cache, from browser cache, it still wouldn't run after 30 milliseconds. It'd have to wait until all the preceding synchronous work is done before it would run. So putting an async attribute on a script and then putting the script at the closing body is largely pointless. But they're deferring them anyway. So on the subject of JavaScript, actually, let's just see how drastic the problem is. And this is just me. This is exactly how I would be working. This is an actual client, except I'd be listening to really bad music. I do this all the time. Now, I genuinely don't believe sites should work without JavaScript. I think that's a pointless endeavor. If someone's turned JavaScript off, they knew what they were doing, just leave them to it. But what I do think is that we should be able to fail fairly sensibly without JavaScript. What's interesting here, right? We've got a synchronous file in the middle of all this deferred stuff. All these are going to get requested simultaneously. But then this basically, that file has to run in situ. It's odd to just put a synchronous script in the middle of loaded deferred stuff. It'd be interesting to just rejig these. But anyway, yeah, what I do is I don't think we should make sites work without JavaScript, but nearly every time I audit a site, Command-Shift-P, disable JavaScript. This really annoys me, right? If I'm typing dis for disable, I'm probably not looking for Swedish, am I? Disable JavaScript. And here's another pro tip. In fact, no, I won't show you that pro tip yet. Let's just see how much JavaScript is needed to build this page, or how much we need JavaScript. Right, that's shocking. That's pretty bad, isn't it? All we get from that first payload and its CSS is that title and a bit of a breadcrumb.
Oh wow!
We don't even get the logo, right? So enable JavaScript. So here's a pro tip. When you want to capture screenshots of a page, go to the Elements panel, delete your body tag, and then hit reload. And you'll always be guaranteed to start with a blank initial screenshot. This is fast 3G. We've managed to get the title rendered. Chrome's even decided to stop taking screenshots. So what we see here is the actual PDP image, the actual thing like buy this bike, hasn't even booted yet. It's going to arrive here, and it's not even, the JavaScript hasn't even, like this is we're 30 seconds in.
Wowzers.
And we haven't even started building, like a spinner. That was nice. And then there's your CLS. Yeah. And there's your image that was also lazy loaded.
And there's the price.
Oops. So anyway, yeah, that's just so inappropriate. Now, what's interesting is if we find this image, H_hero. Say what? I know why, because I've scoped that to. Okay, so there's our
image or bike.
LCP image. We'll see timings wise, it was queued at 35 seconds. It took 35 seconds to even discover that source attribute. Just wild, absolutely wild. And the initiator was, see, it's come out of React. So what we've had to do is we've sent an HTML page to the browser, which has then said, we could do some React actually, and then React runs, and then this component is built in React, and then that hydrates, and it puts a source attribute in the DOM. Actually, it probably puts a data source attribute in the DOM. Then your lazy loading library executes, changes that data source into a source attribute, and then finally we get a request for the image. Like this is
quite the arduous task when it shouldn't be for a LCP
that should be an image tag in some HTML.
Boom.
And honestly, I grow weary of this because there's no way on earth that is going to be fast. It's not. I work with clients a lot, and I see this a lot in e-commerce. Clients are like, we're going to move to like microservices, micro front ends, and we're going to start by building the product details page in some framework on the client. And it's like, please don't, because it's so hard to undo. So yeah, this is mega slow. What I'd like to work out is how do we just get that component booting and built faster? Obviously, refactoring this to, I mean, server render it is the answer. But in the meantime, like, we need to focus on how do we get React running, booting much quicker? How do we get that source attribute into the DOM much quicker?
Yeah.
Because that's pretty bad, isn't it? If we go to the sources panel,
That's shocking, actually.
Yeah, they have got a reference to that image. You probably see it faster if you were to paste this into Facebook. You probably see the image faster than if you visited the website. So yeah, but it's a really like telling sign that we turned JavaScript off and we didn't even see the logo.
Yeah.
This file, it's 115 kilobytes of HTML, and it couldn't even show us the logo. It's just, I do despair, and I sound like I probably don't sound very nice, but it's just, there's no way on this planet that's ever going to be fast. And it's really sad to see, because it's obviously taken a lot of people, a lot of effort to build this. And it's just a bit discouraging to be like, oh yeah, well, you did it wrong. It sounds awful, but there's just no way this is going to be fast.
I mean, ultimately, it just seems that a round of testing wasn't done.
I've said these very same words to a client before. Basically, there wasn't any business analysis done here. What's the cost of doing this? Not the cost of building it. What's the cost of having a site this slow? I don't know. It's just someone who's, people tend to dive in a bit too quick. But we all know this. We all know it because we all say it. Everyone dives in with the latest shiny technology, which is just not appropriate, and it's clearly not working. And it's I feel really bad because a lot of clients hire me to hear this news. I'm like, I'm really sorry to tell you this. Like, I'm working with a client at the moment. Oh, they're not watching because I've not delivered the audit yet, but they're going to hear the exact same thing. Like, there is no way doing more work will ever be faster.
Yep.
Building your website twice, like building a response on the server and then asking a user to build it for you on their device, that just can't be faster. It's just not. It's not going to happen. So that's a real shame. So there's no really immediate actionable thing here other than we need to trim down whatever that 145th request. We need to just get that happening a lot sooner. So render this on the server for a start. Don't lazy load this, but that's still not going to make much of a difference at all. We need to trim down whatever the problem is that gets us, whatever made that so slow.
Yeah,
is what we need to tackle. That document.write, that was document.write that was flagging that as a parser blocking script. What else should we look at while we're here? What I find interesting is we've got quite a lot of third parties. So a lot of people don't know this about Chrome. And basically, WebPageTest is the best tool on the planet for performance testing. But it is just a wrapper around DevTools, basically. So all the information's the same. This view right here is quite, a lot of people don't know what this overview is actually showing us. Basically, we've got loads of entries in here. Some are stacked vertically. Vertical is basically different TCP connections. So if I zoom right in, each of those, so if you see the middle of my cursor there, the middle of my carrot, the little horizontal line is covering that a bit of blue. That's its own TCP connection or its own domain / TCP connection. That's its own connection. That's its own connection. That's its own. This one here is that connection getting reused. So basically what you can see is how many domains you're hitting at each part of the page load lifecycle.
Yep.
So there I'm hitting quite a lot of domains. Then we go silent for a while. Then we reuse some of those domains potentially. And then here we hit a load of origins all simultaneously. And then later on here, we're just hitting stuff over and over again. So it's quantum metrics. So this is all just going to be little beacons. Yeah, quantum metrics.
I mean, we do have a connection view in WebPageTest. So, I mean, you can look at it there.
It's not all about you.
I know. It certainly isn't.
No, the connection view is great. However, well, sorry to be the bearer of bad news. There is currently a bug that Barry Pollard helped me discover.
Who's in the chat, by the way? Hello, Barry.
Barry? Yeah, he basically... Barry wrote such an incredible book on HTTP2 that his reward for writing such a good book is that I'm in his DMs every other day. Why is this broken? What's this going on here? What's going on here? And we do have the connection view in WebPageTest. So actually, let's talk about that real quick. Let's jump back up to the top level of this PDP, performance summary.
Amazing.
Blah, blah, blah. Let's look at the third run because that was the most representative. It's the first view of the third run. The connection view is really nice. And So we've got the web page, we've got the waterfall sort of that shows individual requests and responses. Beneath that, we have the connection view, which it struggles with HTTP 3, is what Barry and I'm throwing Barry right under the bus here. Basically, I messaged him, hey, is it really a case that all those domains have managed to coalesce? So with H2, you get connection coalescence, where origins that share the same IP address can share the same TCP connection. I think just WebPageTest is struggling with H3 connections because there's no way that pay.google and specialized.com and facebook.com all coalesce to the same connection. So unfortunately, this is, for an H3 connection, this isn't that useful at the moment. However, let's assume this is correct, just for the sake of demonstration. Let's assume these are all coalesced. What I really want to see on any client or any site I'm auditing is heavy connection reuse. Mm-hmm. So let's say this is just one connection that is genuinely getting used by all these domains. Perfect. Yeah, slam everything over one connection. Only one TCP connection needs opening. These can all be prioritized against each other. We can saturate that bandwidth. We can just deal with this really well. What I don't like seeing is just one request coming from media.specialized. Mm-hmm. So this will be a manifest file. This will be like the web manifest, which is always fetched over an anonymous connection, which is why we have to open a secondary connection for that file. But like, it's a real shame to see connections not getting reused. Yeah. If we were to, instead of using CDN.js and just actually self-host all of this, what we could do is we could then grab all of those files and add them to this connection. So yeah, connection reuse is really great. And what we don't want to see is lots of different TCP connections getting underutilized. Yep. But then in third-party land, there's nothing we can really do about that.
Yep. Someone had a question here real quick for you. I've always had the problem. Actually, let me put it on the screen.
Yeah, I can't see the screen, so I'll just end up.
All good. I have always had the problem with LCP, and what is the best way to fix it beyond preloading images?
Oh, right. So, bad news is, I'm writing an article about LCP at the moment, and you're going to love it. I haven't published it yet, but if you want to, okay. Do you know what? You're all being very patient. Let me just
comment from Mr. Meanin here. He offered to trade them a bike for consulting services.
I would always swap a bike for consulting services. Right. So I think this is the correct thing. Basically, there's loads of ways to fix LCP. LCP is what you're judged on. It's like what you're judged on is the largest contentful pane. The analogy I use is you've got to get the kids to school at 8:30 tomorrow morning. To do that, to achieve that, you can do loads of stuff to help yourself, like set an alarm for an appropriate time, prepare the kids' lunch and uniform the night before, set off with plenty of time to account for traffic jams, etc. All the school cares about is, did you drop the kids off on time? It's up to you to do things to assist that. Mm-hmm. The way that works for LCP is don't host your LCP on a different origin. Make sure your time to first byte is fast. Make sure... actually, we can see here. This is an article I'm drafting. You can hopefully all see this. But this is stuff you need to take care of. Don't have any redirects on your critical path. Make sure your critical path is nice and fast. Those are things just right out the gate that you can do to help. Just make sure that everything before LCP is tuned nicely. Other things are, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't do anything silly. So don't fade your LCP in. Don't lazy load your LCP. Don't build your LCP candidate in JavaScript like Specialized are doing. Mm-hmm. This is really interesting. So here we've got several different types of LCP. An image tag. Let's go to 0.1 second resolution. So an image tag, 3.3 second LCP. LCP is shown by the solid red border. Mm-hmm. Image tags, nice and fast. Background images, really slow. We don't even have the... let's see if I can... We don't even have the LCP marked on here. Yeah, we do. LCP for a background image, 4.4 seconds. Mm-hmm. The reason for this is background images, what you've got to do is you've got to download the HTML, download its CSS, build the CSS object model, and then parse the element that needs it. So the CSS doesn't actually request the background image. It's a massive misconception. CSS doesn't do any requesting. CSS doesn't request font, doesn't request background images. It's the DOM node that needs that background image. So what you're going to wait for is the HTML the CSS and the CSS OM to be built, then the parser to find the background image before it will actually dispatch the request. That's why background images are really slow for LCP. A way to get around that is if you've currently got a site and you're thinking, oh shit, like my LCP is a background image. Quickest way around that is to basically, if you've got a div, and we'll just do style equals background image URL. God, can you believe I used to sell CSS for a living?
Let's go.
I used to refer to myself as a traveling ClearFix salesman, but no one knows what a ClearFix is anymore. So if you've got this format for your LTP and you have got a background image, you're thinking, oh man, it's going to take so long to refactor this. Quickest hack is just do image source equals ltp.jpg, width equals 0, height equals 0, style equals display none. What this will do is it won't trick the browser. It's not a trick. Important for good measure. It will encourage the browser to dispatch the request from here when the preload scanner is likely to find it. So by the time this gets parsed and the CSS OM is built, the browser isn't panicking looking for this ltp.jpg. It's like, oh, I already downloaded that. I didn't show it yet, but I've already got it in. It's either on its way down the network or it's already in memory. So that's a quick way to hack around LTP if you are currently stuck with this format.
Okay.
That's with the hack. The hack now gets us to 3.4 second LTP. So it buys back it buys back 1 second, right? Video because here's another thing, right? I've got a really bad habit of giving really long answers to very short questions.
The details.
I'm assuming whoever asked this is going to appreciate this because I'm really looking forward to writing this article. It's been put on the back burner because I found a bug in Chrome that is midway being fixed. So yeah, image elements are nice and fast. Image elements and SVGs, that could be an LTP. Video, the poster equals attribute is your LTP. Background images could be an LTP. And text level elements. So actually the quickest way to get a fast LTP is make it text.
Yep.
On my site, for example, on the homepage, it's a big ugly picture of me. That's the LTP. That's a background image. I'm using the image hack. However, if we go and look at this, like that, P is going to be the LTP. So if you can make your LTP a paragraph or a piece of text rather, that's a good fast option. Sorry. So it could be a video. So video poster equals. That's same speed as an image. Look, so that's good. It's very rare you would be using this, but video poster image. Now SVGs are an interesting one. Image element in SVG, there's a bug. An LCP gets reported as this P element. So if we actually go and look at this, I tweeted this the other day. This is a bug in Chrome that they're aware of. It's actually fixed in Chrome 102, which is Canary at the moment.
Yes.
LCP here is reported as this paragraph, which is obviously not. It's obviously this image element in SVG. Now, here's something really interesting. Images in SVG are hidden from the preload scanner. And I don't know if many people know this. If we were to compare an actual image tag, in fact, no, let's compare it down.
Hidden from the preload scanner?
Yeah. I discovered this. I don't know, like when I'm not riding bikes, I'm just dicking around with WebPageTest. And I discovered this quite by accident. So an image tag, you will see the image is discovered basically immediately. It's in the HTML, it's discovered basically immediately. We've got a blocking JavaScript file in the head. I'm doing this just to exaggerate the waterfall. Chrome favors open connection. So even though this JavaScript file is defined first, it's going to grab this image tag. It favors open connection. It's going to request that nice and quick. That's your image tag. Background image, we'll see that it's now, the image doesn't get requested until the first paint, where the browser is like, oh, this div needs a background. So it's not hidden from the preload scanner. The preload scanner isn't even involved here. Now, poster is interesting. Poster isn't hidden from the preload scanner. So poster and image behave virtually identically. If you look at those waterfalls.
Wow, okay.
Image in SVG is hidden from the preload scanner. So that image, the request for the image, isn't dispatched until the parser hits that bit of the HTML. I would love to pester Paul Calvano. Again, everyone who knows me on this thing, all my performance mates are just used to answering my questions in DMs. Outwardly, I see like I know everything. But I passed a Barry about H2, I passed a Pat about Chrome, and I passed a Paul about HTTP Archive. I reckon so few people are using this method anyway, the image and SVG, that it's not really going to affect many origins, many sites.
Mhm.
But just so you know, this slow by default, this slow by default. However, with this, there is currently a bug, and your LCP gets flagged as a text node. Whereas
Interesting.
yeah, so if you want to game the system, you want to improve your vitals, for the next 2 weeks, start using SVG images. And the syntax, when I say an SVG image, I'll show you what the syntax is. The syntax is that's what I mean by an SVG image. So not the SVG itself isn't your LCP, it's this image element.
Mm-hmm.
There's currently a bug. There's currently a bug where Google say, hey, you could use an image element, but you're going to get favorable results because Google takes, or Chrome, sorry, takes the text node, that paragraph.
I'm going to cut out this whole section of the talk.
How come?
No, I'm just saying, well, it's like the hack.
Yeah, well, that's, with great power. I mean, you could go and do this hack, and then in 2 weeks, you'll get penalized because it's currently going to go from one of the fastest LCP elements, mistakenly, to one of the slowest. Because if you look at the actual LCP here, it's, I don't know, it's like, it's as slow as a background image, basically. Your LCP is one of these, but it's currently getting flagged. So those are your types of thing you could use. So as per web.dev, those are the things you could use. Slow by default, but currently a bug. Fast by default, fastest, because if you can make it text-based, that's how you get fastest. Other things to avoid, don't lazy load your LCP, because that is just very counterproductive.
Driving with the handbrake.
Yep. Don't fade your LCP in, because that image could have been displayed there, but we faded it in over however long I faded it in, and your LCP is actually taken as when the image has stopped fading. And this is the heartbreaking one. LCP is 7.8 seconds because what I did is I just built a late loading cookie banner. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, just avoid stuff like that.
Cookie banners.
So yeah, the article is going to be great when I actually get around to writing it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're certainly looking forward.
Yeah, that was a complete tangent, wasn't it? But hopefully that was useful to whoever asked it.
It certainly was. I mean, I certainly made a discovery, and the gentleman or the gentle person who had asked, I'm sure enjoyed every bit of that answer. Let's get LCP.
Yeah, I don't have a title for it yet. This is just very scrappy, but that's what I'm working on.
Nice.
All right, what should we look at? I mean, I don't know how much time we've got down for this thing, but I'm good to keep going.
I mean, we've been here for like 90 minutes, so I think I don't know. I feel like we've had an insightful session.
I mean, I can keep going. Any more questions any people have got about anything we're looking at?
Yeah, I was going to say, are there any more questions as we begin to sort of like taper down this vainglorious event of web page test auditing? What's going on here? It's all quiet suddenly. It was like chirpy chirp for a hot minute. Either way, that part was pretty interesting. The idea of completely turning off the JavaScript and just getting a title, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean that's just inappropriate, isn't it?
Yeah, and then that's a little wild, but no, that was I've always said that curiosity is what is really needed here. Anytime you and anyone who's sort of like into web page tests or doing auditing, you literally have to just look at every site, because that's how you start to make these discoveries. And these discoveries along time become muscle memory. You start to remember patterns, and you can start to predict what things are going to look like, what the outcomes are going to be like when pages are loading, et cetera, et cetera. I have a question here. Anti-flicker and A/B tests. How to stop marketing from wanting that? A/B testing. I mean, I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, I'm dealing with this with a client at the moment, and it's really it's awkward because if a client comes to me and says, "How do I make this site faster?" and I say, "Remove your anti-flicker snippet," and they say no, it's like, well, cool. I'm still gonna have to invoice you. So really, realistically, to me, I used to try and I'm not sure how I'm wording it, but if they're insistent on leaving it on, they have to deal with a slow website. You can't hide a page for 2 seconds and have a fast website. It's literally they're asking for two opposite things. So if someone digs their heels in, it's like, no, we need this anti-flicker, but we need a fast website. It's like, how do you expect? You can't have both. That's not possible. You can't hide a page for 2 seconds and have a fast site. So you just got to be insistent and say, well, look, here's the before and after. Here is like a film strip side by side. If we get rid of the anti-flicker, blah, blah, blah. Now, that makes me probably sound a bit like it or leave it. That's my advice. And if you're not going to do it, then screw you. Obviously, when I actually work with clients, I'm far more kind of helpful. So, okay, well, why do you need to hide the whole page? Can we not maybe change the tests so they're a little more subtle? Can we, rather than testing like an entire new hero design, why aren't we testing much more subtle things? Anything that's really big, like let's say doing an A/B test, an entire new header, that should be done like edge side or server side. Anything that actually changes the page that drastically. Genuine true story. Had a client years ago, and you've all heard of them. They, I'm not going to name them. That's very tasteless.
Yeah, of course. I'll name them.
But they hated their CMS. They had like a brand, like a sub brand that I was consulting for, and I was like, wow, Optimizely is heavy. Like this is just enormous. And when I disabled Optimizely, it was like, this is a totally different website. Like this isn't just changing buttons from blue to red. This is a whole different website Optimizely is creating. Like, why are we doing such wholesale tests? They were like, oh, actually, those aren't tests. We just hate the CMS, so we just make content changes through Optimizely.
Oh,
so instead of actually changing the website in their content management system, everything they just deployed as an A/B test. They weren't testing anything. It was like 100% always on.
Oh my God.
It's Christmas. We need to do a new promo. We need this new banner design and whatever. And they just deploy it as an A/B test. So I was like, oh, wow. You've got organizational problems that this lad from Leeds can't help you with.
Yeah, seriously. It's like you stepped into a family quarrel. You're like, I think I'm out of here.
Yeah. So anti-flicker. The practical advice is just try and work with marketing or whoever to design tests that are less intrusive, so you don't need to hide the whole page. Ultimately, I know your advice has been working a lot on this or discussing this quite a lot. A/B testing needs a shakeup. It's client-side A/B testing is flawed, but it's great because you can be very reactive. You can do it without a deploy. It's quite democratized. But the trade-off is that it's bad for performance. So doing like A/B providers looking at doing edge-side transforms and edge-side A/B tests can be really powerful, using workers for that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you're stuck with client-side A/B testing, try to do it asynchronously and try and do it in a way that the tests are minimal.
Yeah. He's come up a few times, but an engineer by the name of Zach Tolman has always had this battle because he works at Condé Nast, the the editorial magazine company. Yeah, powerhouse, absolutely. And he has talked about this before. It's like, this is my baseline. I have a bunch of testing. I have a bunch of marketing, to deal with, and I go from there. So he tries to have those conversations with the teams that are involved in slowing his site down. But he understands that this has to happen. I had another question here from Geeky Karan. I hope I pronounced that right. What are some tips and strategies to follow for sites that meet LCP thresholds on desktop but are a few seconds off on mobile? Any low-hanging fruits to remember?
Yeah, I mean, as Vitals roll out to desktop, we are seeing what we always knew to be true. Desktop connections and devices tend to be faster. So hitting your Vitals on desktop's way easier. it's a bit of a lazy answer, but I'd invert the paradigm and be like, rather than, nah. Basically, your only focus should be mobile. If you know that desktop trends faster anyway, you can largely forget about it. Just forget about your desktop metrics.
Yeah.
The kind of stuff we discussed, if you're a few seconds off, it's quite a long old way. So it'd be make sure that image is hosted on the same origin. So for example, on my site, I use Cloudinary for all my images, except my LCPs. Because it's quicker to download a heavier, less optimized image from the same origin than it is to go and get a smaller image from a different origin.
From a third party.
Yeah, so self-host your LCP, optimize the bejesus out of it, and then as we discussed, just don't put anything in the way, so don't make it a background image, don't do anything with JavaScript. If you're a few seconds off, that's pretty egregious. I would say that's going to be a case of the image needs like heavily optimizing. And if it's seconds off, there's other stuff in the way. There just has to be like, is it being lazy loaded or if it's that far off, I'd say the problem's probably maybe further down the stack as well. So go to that Treo tool and see what Treo reckons about your time to first byte and see what it reckons about your FCP. See if you can trim any of the fat there.
And that's for the crux data you said, right?
That's for crux data,
Yeah. I'm going to go and look at this last question here, and let's post that up about faded LCP images. Some websites dual load images. Okay. Basically a small low res image first. Oh, okay. So you mean low quip? Is that what it's called? Yeah. Not sure if low res image would improve LCP, but any thoughts on that approach?
I don't have a canonical answer to this because it seems to change. It will take the last paint, the last largest paint. So if you load a small image, if you load an image the same dimensions but really low quality, it will still take the last paint. So I'm going to screen share again. What quite annoys me is LCP doesn't take into account low quality images or placeholder images, nor does it take into account. Right, am I sharing my screen there? Yeah, I am.
Yeah, you are. Hold up. Bingo.
So for example, on my site, sorry, you have to look at me twice. Oh, you may have seen it there, a low quality image. Right, that LCP is always going to be the high res, shiny forehead Harry, and never this. Also, LCP doesn't take into account progressive rendering yet. So basically, even though this might be visually perfect, 80% of the image bytes over the wire, the LCP fires when 100% are over. So you're going to be penalized there. So the low quality image will not be taken into account. It'll take the latest of the paints, the latest of the large paints. However, I saw it just last week that there's a WordPress plugin which replaces image sources with a base64 transparent SVG. And that transparent SVG paints immediately because it's base64. And that gets the LCP. So I've got a client at the moment who their LCP is really late, but their metric comes back really favorable because for some reason Chrome's picking this invisible SVG, and I feel a bit bad because this is a client and I've totally grassed them up. I just messaged the Vitals team like, oh, my client's cheating the system. Tell them off. So there seems to be some, even now, there seems to be inconsistency about what paint gets counted.
Right. I've always found it interesting how complicated the LCP has become, which is fascinating because, that makes for the auditing and the investigative work that much more sort of detailed. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask you about one thing that I wanted to ask earlier on. You talked about this blog post that you're going to complete on LCP images, but when it comes to writing, you also have a book out.
I published it last year, so it's yesterday's news now. But
okay.
I wrote a book over lockdown.
Yeah. And I was like, I remembered, and I was like, oh man, I forgot to ask him about that, but I'll ask him at the end. So I'm assuming the details are available on your website.
Yeah. One thing I find really interesting, quite flattering, really, is a lot of people ask me about my work as like the non-technical aspect of it. So a lot of people seem quite interested in consulting, like working for different clients, working for larger clients. And I just sort of muddled my way through it, if I'm honest. I sort of went self-employed when I was 23. No real background in self-employment. But over the years, one thing I've really learned is that most effective thing you can do for your clients is not turn up with the answers, just turn up with the questions. I've never been to a therapist, but I presume it's a similar kind of thing, right? Where your therapist is not allowed to tell you what to do. They just quiz you until you arrive at your own conclusions. And that's basically what the book's about. It's all the questions that I've gathered over the years, like deep, insightful questions where it's like, you have clients like, oh, we've not thought about that. And they do, and they think, oh, wow, well, that completely transforms this project. It's like, sweet, I'm glad I asked. So yeah, it was a really fun little thing to put together. So I've, for years, just kept a little text file on my machine of like, oh, that was a good question. I'll ask that again. During lockdown, I just expanded on it and whatever. If we've got show notes, I'll stick a link with a discount code in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get something from you, and we'll whip something up in the when I edit the video and put that in the section. Harry, thank you very much for your time. That was
thank you,
pretty
for like I say, unfortunately, I've not been in the Twitch stream because that would just end up with loads of feedback. So I've not actually been able to see who.
It's quite fine. You know, I've come up with most of the questions. You know, there was some commentary between them, between the attendees, so that was good. I mean, I was going to say, if people need to find you, I guess they can hit you on Twitter.
That's the best place for it.
Okay.
Yeah, if anyone's got any questions or anything I didn't cover or whatever, sling me a tweet or a DM or whatever, and we can pick things up on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, they can follow you there, obviously, as well. For anyone who is on Twitter as well, please give WebPageTest a follow. And, you know, we have this hashtag for the WPT Live, but, you know, I always forget to sort of, you know, bring it up at the start. So it's kind of like useless at the end of the show, right? However, you also want some more info on WPT, myself, I'll be more than happy to answer some questions there. And obviously, if you have questions, you can also check the WebPageTest Twitter handle. And the other thing that I want to mention, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I got something I want to say before we wrap up.
Oh, please.
I can go. Well, I can say it now. Just I couldn't do my job without WebPageTest. Like WebPageTest bought me bikes, right? It keeps a roof over my head. So massive gratitude to Pat for inventing the thing and tirelessly looking after it for, I mean, God knows how long now. We need to wrap Pat in sort of cotton wool and wrap
I know, right?
Just make sure nothing.
You know. Now that you mentioned that, I'm going to share a quick story because I was there. So for the ones that are listening here, I co-organized a performance event in Toronto. And both Pat and Harry were there, meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
I remember it like it was yesterday. And, you know, and Harry actually just kind of calmly, you know, turned to Pat and said, like, dude, like, thank you.
Well, I can tell a story. This is going to embarrass him.
Okay, go ahead.
Pat is wildly humble, suspiciously humble. I was trying to keep my shit together, trying not to, like, fanboy too hard. So I was like, yeah, like you say, I've kept it cool. Hey, yo, Pat. I was like, I'd really like to take you for lunch or something, just to say thank you. I'd love to just take you for lunch. Like, I don't know what's good. And I know the food and drink in Toronto is insanely good. Like, let's go somewhere nice. Pat was like, oh, I was just going to grab a burger. I was like, no, we can go anywhere. Like, honestly, he's like, let's go and grab a burger. So we went and found this great burger joint that's delicious. I remember just sat there thinking, this is wild. Like, just sat in a burger with Pat. It's cool. It's nice. It's wildly humble.
No, I remember that, and you know, it was fun to watch because you're like, dude, you've made me tons of money. Like,
yeah, I didn't say that. That's gross. But what I mean is,
it was something along those lines.
No. Basically, I could not do my job without it. It would be impossible. So it's not about money. It's about the fact that it's just it is my job, right? I couldn't do it without it.
Yeah. No, it was interesting moment. So, but I was glad I could bring together two fantastic minds, you know, in Toronto, like, holy smokes, miles apart from home. But the last thing I did want to mention, as I'm looking at a few of the comments here, we will be back in a couple weeks. And since everyone's here, I'm going to make the sort of like announcement. I don't know if I could do this. Oh no, I don't have sharing preferences. What? How is this possible? Oh, come on now. Come on, Chrome. Brah. All right. Well, I'm not going to be able to show it, but I'll mention it right here. In 2 weeks, we are going to have Simon Hearn. He's going to join us, ye of Request Map, which is actually an officially supported integration into WebPageTest. But we're excited to have Simon come join us. Formerly of NCC, what was it called again? And then he went to Akamai. Anyways, amazing engineer, and he's going to be joining us and talking about his sort of venture using WebPageTest, and obviously we're going to talk about Request Map as well. Folks, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, and stay tuned. And again, April 7th is going to be our next one, and that is going to be with Mr. Hearn. All right. Cheers, folks.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And yeah, just if anyone's got any questions, you know where to find me. But yeah, Henri, thank you.